Order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May we have a roll call?
Is Mrs. Bennett zooming? She's not.
It appears not.
Okay. Mrs. Eckert?
Here.
Mr. Franco?
Here.
Mrs. Goebel?
Here.
Dr. O'Sherrick?
Here.
Dr. Perbola?
Here.
Mr. Farr?
Here.
Mrs. Arnold?
Here.
And Mr. Burke is absent.
Okay. Let the record show we have held 2 executive sessions since our last board meeting. One was on Monday evening, April 15th, related to discussion of third-party contract and personnel matters related to that third-party contract. And then this evening, prior to tonight's board meeting, we had an executive session on personnel matters related to a third-party contract. All right. Do we have any superintendent remarks this evening?
Yes.
Oh, imagine that.
Good evening, everyone. I'm always happy to have the chance to address the board and our school community. I try to use this time really in 2 ways: to promote the students in our school district and to provide clarification on some recent or pending items. Last month, to control future energy costs, the board took the proactive step to approve a solar energy project on our campus. Currently, we budget close to $1 million each year for energy. Before this decision was made, there was close to 1.5 years of discussions that occurred, not only at monthly board meetings, but also at multiple Buildings and Grounds Committee meetings. We conducted multiple site visits, gathered lots and lots of information from school districts that have already installed solar arrays. We also engaged an independent engineer to oversee the project and an independent solar energy consultant and law firm to not only examine the project, but to recalculate and confirm expected savings and vet the contract with the solar company. All research and data supported the plan. Once implemented, the solar arrays are expected to reduce energy costs by at least $750,000 annually. I'd like to thank the many people in our community that have spoken to me and as they see me at events and are very supportive. I can't emphasize enough that the discussion to utilize solar arrays, it was a financial decision. Everyone's aware that about 2 years ago, electricity costs skyrocketed. Ours just about doubled. When that occurred, we immediately sought an alternative that would provide cost stability and protection from future inflation of energy. Now, we all know that sometimes social media can sometimes be toxic. Oftentimes, information is posted that is incomplete or inaccurate. Personally, I really don't have a social media presence, but some of the negative posts that have been shared with me, quite frankly, they were just inaccurate. To provide further accurate information to our stakeholders, we've set up an email account specifically to address questions about the solar project. Questions can be sent to solar@tasd.net. We will monitor the account and respond in a timely manner. I'd like to thank the board for their forward financial thinking in approving this solar energy project. We have an important meeting tonight. I'm really looking forward to it. The big items for consideration are next year's preliminary budget, not the final budget, and the potential approval of a food service vendor. When we get to the preliminary budget on the agenda, I will share an overview for everyone using a PowerPoint. It'll be brief, I promise. I look forward to discussing the preliminary budget with the board. We always have a great discussion. The board will also be considering a contract for food service tonight, and I'd like to share some additional information about the pending approval of a food service contract with Metz Culinary Management. For those cafeteria employees that have our school district health care, coverage will be provided by the district through the end of August. METS is providing job and wage protections for the employees throughout the contract. They also stated that there may be opportunities for increased hours for the staff. If selected tonight, METS will welcome the opportunity to meet with our current cafeteria staff at a time convenient to them in the very near future. Earlier today, we again contacted some of our neighboring districts, Elk Lake and Dallas, regarding their relationship with METS. We have spoken to them multiple times throughout this process, but they are both very happy with the service that METS provides, and both districts reinforced that they would not consider running their own food service again. As I reflect on this school year, a couple of things come to mind. First, it was a very good school year. It really was. But like every district, we have challenges. But really, I can't praise enough the hard work and professionalism of our teachers, our paras, administrators, security officers, cafeteria staff, our clerks, our nurses, maintenance, custodians, even our bus and van drivers. They all do great work, and it truly is the definition that it takes a village, and we have a good one. The district is safe and positive place for students because of the dedication of those employees. Again this year, we will have summer programming for quite a few of our elementary students. Over 300 students in grades kindergarten through 3 will be invited to participate. This summer program will be financed solely with our remaining federal ESSER funds. And finally, I'd like to remind everybody, please check with your child's school about upcoming events, field trips, and end-of-the-year activities. There's so much happening each day in our schools and on our campus. And thank you very much for the opportunity to address the board and the school community.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move into public comment period. So this evening's meeting will have 2 public comment periods, as they all do. One will be now, and that is to only speak on items that are an agenda item in tonight's meeting. Each person who wants to speak, they have to be a resident, taxpayer, student, staff, or parent of a student in the Tunkhannock School District, can come to the podium, state your name and the agenda item that you want to speak about, and then you'll be timed for 4 minutes. There will also be a comment period at the end for anything, whether it was on the agenda tonight or not, or even agenda items that you want to comment on after the actions were completed. And the same policies, rules, and procedures apply for that. If anybody has to make an objection under the Sunshine Act, they would come to the podium at the time that they believe that there was an objectionable behavior. State your name and your objection by the section and subsection of the law, and then the board will make a determination that's effective for tonight's purposes based on that objection. With that, the floor is open for public comment on agenda items.
Good evening. I don't know who I am. I see the budget's on the line. I'm hoping to use push for 0 mills budget. Population is predicted down over 10% by the middle of the 2040s. Wyoming County is one of the largest counties of elderly and low-income people, and it's getting tougher every day. Gas is pushing, today I see up to $3.80 a gallon, and that's what I got on the budget. Last month, solar, I'm trying to remember, trying to find out, when did solar go from 2 things down to 1 and it becomes 6A? Because I don't have any paperwork.
That's not on the agenda for tonight, though, Bill. That'll be
Well, that's in your, when you do the minutes for last month.
if there's an error in the minutes, that would be an agenda item. But
Okay, I'll
otherwise-
do it
yeah,
after.
That's fine, no problem.
And then where was the cafeteria meeting advertised? I missed it somewhere.
It was
In the paper.
in the paper.
Wasn't in last week's Tunkhannock paper.
Or at the Times.
It was in the Times.
Times
because-
Leader?
Yes.
Okay,
No.
then I've missed
No,
it.
so,
Scranton Times.
Scranton Times, sorry.
All right, well, that's the main thing, the budget, and we've got to curb expenses.
Thanks, Bill.
Hello. I'm Michael Slavinsky. I'm the assistant varsity wrestling coach. I wanted to express concerns with the current state of our wrestling mats. The mats are losing their ability to help protect the student athletes. The padding has lost its ability to properly absorb and rebound from the impacts that are happening in the wrestling room. So new mats would help keep our wrestler athletes safer and more from injuries. And that was it.
Thank you.
Diane Turle, I'm a taxpayer in town with a house and an office. I'd like to keep taxes down to zero. I'm paying in actually 2.5 properties. One property doesn't have any buildings on it, but it's getting harder and harder. And the student population is not growing. So I just recommend that you keep any tax increases to zero.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment on agenda items? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 5, enrollments. They're there for your information on pages 6 and 7. Item 6, approval of minutes.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or issues with the minutes? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. All right, moving on to business and finance. Do we have a motion for items 1 through 6?
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the business and finance items? Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. All right, that takes us to the superintendent's report.
I'd like to recommend a resolution be adopted approving the personnel report as presented.
Motion to approve. Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
I'd just like to point out and congratulate Karen Kudish, who is a high school science teacher, in passing that personnel report. You just approved her retirement plan to retire at the end of the year. That is a huge loss for our school district. She is an outstanding teacher. She's also the department chair, and we're going to have some pretty big shoes to fill. So congratulations to Karen on a great career, and it won't be too late if you change your mind and want to stay.
I did want to also, for her, publicly just, thank her. My students really, I have a student that managed to make it through a medical degree from Mrs. Kudish's biology, and she helped her in college, and it was really great. So she's just it's a real loss for our school district. Thank you for your service.
And number
And
two.
I'll echo that because Mrs. Kudish taught several of my kids and they loved her.
Number 2, I'd like to recommend a resolution be adopted approving conference attendant for Catherine Wisnowski for the AP Summer Institute, AP Language. Just so the board is aware, to teach an AP course, you have to be certified by AP to teach it, and you have to take this course.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? This is a position that had been taken by Mrs. Harvey, who's retiring. So
Yes.
Mrs. Wisnowski is going to fill that position. All right, roll call, please.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Committee reports. I know that we had a cafeteria committee meeting on Monday the 15th, and this evening we had a curriculum committee meeting. I don't believe there were other committees that met since our last board meeting. Do we need to schedule any others? I don't think we do. Okay. Any other comments on committee meetings or? Great. Unfinished business. Number 1, motion to approve the second reading of the policies listed. Number 202, eligibility of non-resident students. Number 903, public comment in board meetings. And number 907, school visitors.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. O'Sherrick?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item 2, motion to approve the 24 to 27 K to 12 Guidance 339 plan. This is procedural. We brought it into daylight at the last board meeting, and we have to pass one every 3 years, right?
That's correct. It's very similar to the comprehensive plan. It has to be passed every 3 years. It's a state requirement to do so.
Okay.
Motion
Yes,
to
it's been
approve.
posted on our website for 30 days.
Okay. We had a motion to approve.
Yep.
Second.
We have a second. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. All right, under new business, first 3 items are there for your information purposes. The update on right to know requests, the TASD visa account, and the summary of Cali Services substitute teacher fill rate. Give you a minute to look over that and just see if anybody has any questions or comments to add to those. Anything to discuss? Okay. Item 4, the first reading of the policy number 610 for purchases subject to bid and quotation. Just there to, we won't be voting on that tonight. It's just the
I
first
just want to
reading.
point out for the board, the only thing that's changing in that is every year the dollar amount changes, and we're just updating the dollar amount to comply
Right.
with current year.
Okay. Item 5, recommend that a resolution be adopted to approve the proposed final 24-25 budget. Now, do you want to make a comment, or do you want a motion from somebody first, or?
I mean, I do have a presentation
okay.
that's a couple slides.
That's right.
Yes.
I mean, certainly you
No, jump right in.
certainly could overrule me. I'm going to start out by saying it's very difficult to budget in April because there are still so many unknowns. First of all, our school year's not over. We're not through with staffing. We don't know our exact needs. For instance, here, something that could definitely impact staffing, and that's our biggest cost, is enrollments coming in the door. Like, what does kindergarten enrollment look like coming in? How many students are enrolling? So there's a lot of things that are going to change between April at the preliminary budget and June at a final budget. This vote tonight, the preliminary budget, why it is mandated by the state, there is a certain procedure we have to follow. This vote tonight actually doesn't mean all that much. So the budget that's really going to impact the district and the community is the one that gets approved in June. So this is our almost like a rough draft. That's the best way to liken a preliminary budget. So the timeline we have laid out is April 18th, today, the proposed budget. Our next board meeting, there'll be some more discussion about it because things will be clearer in a month. They'll be much clearer, and then by June, they'll be crystal. May 31st, we have to meet a deadline for the proposed budget adoption. June 13th is our board meeting in June, when I'm hoping to be able to pass a final budget. And the deadline for PDE to pass a budget from us, is June 30th, which is kind of ironic because it's also extremely difficult for us to budget before the state budget is finalized. And I'm sure everyone realizes the state budget very rarely, in recent times, very rarely has been done by the end of June, even though they also have the same requirement. So as of right now, we don't have any concrete information as to what our state funding looks like for next year. So that's also impacting what we're showing here.
I think it's worth mentioning that when we do, the thing that does tie tonight's vote to the June vote is the fact that only the budgets presented this evening as options, only one of them can be chosen for the final budget. So we can't say put out, I think tonight we have a 0, 1, 2, 4 mill options to consider. We couldn't come back at the end of June and say 3 or 5. The maximum that the state would allow, which we had said, we voted I think in January that we would not exceed the maximum for the year, is around 6 for us. So, it's not like we could present 0, 1, 2, 4 and then vote on 6 in June. So only the options presented tonight, only one of them could be the final budget.
No, the max, our Act 1 index is 6.4%, which is the equivalent of, I think, about 5.4 or 5.3.
Okay.
I would never
Right.
bring that to the board.
No.
Our key factors for consideration right now, and again, I can't emphasize enough that there's going to be massive changes to this. Right now, our proposed budget is about $1.4 million deficit with no tax increase. And the four, as President Arnold, to reiterate what you said, the ones that'll be considered tonight for your approval are 0, 1, 2, and 4 mills. Tax increase per mill, our collection rate is about 93%, which equates to a mill equaling about $287,000. So you can see here, here's our expenses or our projected expenses that our budgeted expenses are about $54,600,000, and that includes new spending of about $1.4 million, which is tied to mostly contractual bargaining agreements, cyber charter costs, and any kind of potential capital project that might be going on. So that's what that increase is coming from. I mean, we knew that when the professional contract was passed, we had this discussion publicly, we knew that was going to be about 2 mills a year. In this budget, we've increased. Currently, there are negotiations going on with our support staff, their association, and I estimated as best I could what I think that potentially will end up agreeing on. Again, we'll have more information when that does get finalized. Our wages are about 40% of the budget. Our benefits are about 29%. Our debt service is about 2%. Transportation, which continues to rise, is about 6%. And then again, there's our energy cost and utilities of just shy of $1 million that's budgeted. So our total fixed budget is 79%. So we know that that's going to occur. Here's the good thing. We're mindful. We're very mindful. I kind of pride myself in really, I'll say, a business of this size. You know, we're a $50 million business. We're a school district, $50 million business. I look at every single item that's purchased in this school district. I sign every PO that comes through. And there's a lot. There's a lot. But I question a lot of things. I question whether or not we need them. And quite honestly, I say no to things. and we've been very mindful of spending. This year, we're projecting a surplus of this school year of about $1.7 million. That would bring our fund balance to just over $12 million, should that projection hold true. I mean, there's still over 2 months left of the school year, so should that hold true, that would be about a $12 million fund balance. Significant changes for 24-25. I mean, we continue to assess our capital needs. I mean, we know that we have 2 buildings in this building and our primary center that are about 50 years old, and they're both in very good shape. Our maintenance and custodial people do a real nice job. We maintain what we have, but they're 50 years old, and there's things that we're going to have to start doing, so that's something that's always on our radar. That the ESSER funds that have been funding a lot of our capital projects, they're ending at the end of September of 24. So we have a bunch of projects going on this summer to make sure that all gets spent. Medical insurance, what we've been told about medical insurance, now we're part of a consortium for healthcare with many other school districts. I think we've been told an increase not to exceed, Dr. Suppan, 8%? 8%. So, excuse me, we've been told healthcare not to exceed 8%. There's salary increases annually, and we certainly always want to try to keep an appropriate fund balance. We will also have 1 teacher salary coming back onto our books from ESSER that we had offset through the ESSER grant, and being that that's gone away, that'll be coming back onto our books. A zero mill budget will provide a shortfall of about 1.5. Each collected mill provides approximately $287,000, and that says I, but it's we. We're very mindful. The principals are very mindful. I will say because I meet with every department myself, along with Dr. Suppan, about their individual budgets, and all of our schools came in with flat budgets. They understood the message I was sending, and they all proposed flat budgets, which is very good, especially at the high school, because this year we're also going to cover the cost of AP exams, and he was able to work that into his existing budget to do so. So that's certainly a positive thing. Our unknowns, basically the status of state funding. There's so much back and forth now about fair funding versus how schools were traditionally funded. I don't know what our final number is going to be from the state. That's a huge, huge unknown for us. What we're still examining is what positions can be eliminated through attrition. And now as people are retiring and people leave the district, this is exactly the thing we examine. Every single position, does it need to be backfilled? Every single one of them. The inflation rate, I mean, I watch more business TV than I ever did in the past because I like to track that. And inflation is creeping up again. And again, any future capital needs. So, our next steps, my team and I, our next steps are we're going to examine the remaining 21% of the budget to see what can be reduced without impacting our student programming. So far, this will be my 3rd budget that I'm presenting to the board. We've done I think we've done a very nice job at making sure our budget balanced without it impacting student programs. And I'm proud of that. I can't say that'll always be the case because that probably is not realistic, because at some point, we'll get to the point that there won't be attritional savings. We're going to continue to find ways to reduce staffing. And I'll come back to the board on May 16th with an update. At this point, I would recommend, I'm confident I can get that number down a lot. I don't want to say a number out loud. I have a number in my head. I don't want to say it out loud until it comes to fruition. Where I'd be comfortable at, I would be comfortable and I would recommend that you consider a 1 mil increase But certainly, no matter what the board does, and I say this to you every year, no matter what the board decides, I will make it work. Thank you.
Thank you. I had a quick question. That salary that was being paid by ESSER, that's going to come back on the regular books, that, just to clarify, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know this has been something that's talked about on social media. This was a position that existed prior to ESSER, prior to COVID.
Oh, yes.
We found that we could pay for it out of ESSER money to give our budget a cushion,
Yes.
and it's just coming back. This is not a new position that was created
No.
due to COVID or ESSER or...
No,
some
President
other-
Arnold, that's a great question. I didn't even think of that. But yes, this is a position that existed prior to ESSER funding, and we just offset the cost. Basically, we took that cost out of the general budget, and we were able to pay it through federal ESSER funds. And now that that's expiring, we have to
come back.
assume it back.
Well, do we have a motion for a budget? And then if that's seconded, then we can have more discussion.
I'll make a motion for 0% increase.
Second.
Joe Mill?
All right, we have a motion and a second for a 0 mil increase. Any other discussion that people would like to have about that at this time?
No, just as a reminder, this is preliminary, so we'll have more data
We call this
in another.
this is the Swilly disclaimer, that this budget, when we come back in June, the actual budget pass could be any one of those 4 that are presented tonight. But this is just saying preliminarily, with the information that we have, we're comfortable saying it's 0 unless or until we come back and there's more information and data and we decide that we need to consider a 1, 2, or 4.
And in June, Paul, in June, the data we would know would be any more people that might want to retire or
Yes.
leave.
Yes.
We wouldn't have the state information, probably.
Maybe
Probably
Maybe.
not.
Good.
Probably not. I'm going to go out on a limb and say we won't.
Right.
See, but there's also, I mean, one of the things, and if people are listening or people are here, you know, one of the things I would ask you to do is reach out to local state reps, local state senators, ask them to support cyber charter reform. That is something that is impacting you directly. For instance, we have about 110, 115 students that are in cyber charter schools. That cost is, we've budgeted next year, I think $3.2 million for that cost. It's astronomical. And there's pending legislation to fix the cost of that. And by fix, what I mean is every district pays the same. So for instance, a student that goes to one of the cyber charter schools from Tunkhannock, the tuition is different than a student at Lackawanna Trail in the same grade that goes to that same school. It's different. There's a formula that the state uses, but essentially what happens is for a general education student, we get charged $17,000 for a student to attend a cyber charter. For a special education student, we get charged $38,000 for a special education student to attend a cyber charter. What's being decided as part of this next budget negotiation is a flat fee for every school district for that service. So cyber charters don't have the overhead that a traditional school district does. But what's being discussed is a flat rate for general education students of $8,000, and then a scaled rate based on a potential disability. Depending on what the disability is for the student, that would be scaled. You could see this on PDE's website. It would save us about $980,000 a year if that was passed.
That's over 3 mils.
That's over $3 million.
So I think it's worth mentioning that this is something I'm also passionate about. I want to put out the disclaimer that there are families that are served to their needs of what's best for their family with cyber charter.
Absolutely.
Cyber charter is not going away. No one's trying to put them out of business. But to give you perspective, we have a $12 million fund balance at the end of this budget if nothing else goes wrong. There are cyber charters in our state right now who have a fund balance that's pushing $500 million. They're close to $500 million in their bank account. If you go to the arena, you'll see one that has sponsored a whole hospitality area at the end of, in the one hockey end zone, for advertising to bring in new clientele. The other issue with the special ed piece of it is a student might not have been identified as a special ed student at Tunkhannock, or maybe they were evaluated and it was not determined that they needed special ed services. The incentive for the cyber charters is to identify them as needing services, even if they just say, well, they just need a little bit of speech. We could probably provide speech to a student at Tunkhannock for, I'm going to ballpark, like $2,000 a year, if that. I mean, to provide speech services. If they get identified in the cyber charter world as special ed by needing some speech services, they go from getting $16,000 to $17,000 a year from Tunkhannock to getting $38,000 to $39,000 a year from Tunkhannock for a service that probably only costs them a couple thousand, if that. So this is a big thing. I was in Harrisburg last Monday trying to advocate for this for public schools. And if you call Tina Pickett and tell her that this is important, if you call Lisa Baker's office and tell them that this is important, we're not trying to put cyber charters out of business. We're just trying to make it reasonable and fair and have a funding process that makes sense, because the current one does not.
It truly is funded with like local taxpayer dollars.
It is.
And last year, cyber charters, 30% of their budgets were for advertising.
Right.
So that'd be like me asking the board to approve $15 million out of our budget so I could go out and advertise.
Right.
I wouldn't be on the stage next month if that occurred.
Right. But as important as that is, and as much as that would help all of us, that would truly be a situation-changing turn of events. We have a $0 mil budget on the table here as our preliminary that was given a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion on this? All right, hearing none. Can we get a roll call, please?
Mrs. Eckert,
Yes.
Mr. Franco,
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel,
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick,
Yes.
Dr. Perbola,
Yes.
Mr. Farr,
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold.
Yes. Okay, item 6, motion to approve a contract with Metz Culinary Management to provide the district's food services. Per the contract, the guaranteed profit in year 1 is $506,939.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? I know Mr. Doherty talked a lot about the details of this and other information we've gotten since the cafeteria meeting. The question was which service, my question was at the committee meeting, which service would we want to approve if we were one of the cafeteria staff? I think we kind of looked at all the different things, and this group scored the highest for that. So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
I would just like to thank Chuck for all of his help and hard work in getting all the numbers together and, organizing the bids and helping us to come to logically see a choice.
Well, thank you. And several of us did go to other schools and see firsthand what two of the companies that were considered, how they performed, including Metz.
And I think it's important to note that the profit would be put back into the cafeteria and food service. So, that's a profit we don't have today for our cafeteria and food service. So that could only benefit the students towards $500,000 worth of something in that area.
We've had many years where basically we've had about $200,000 net loss in the cafeteria.
Right.
That we've had to fund out of the general fund, and as we saw, 1 mil is $287,000, so that was almost a mil.
Yeah, since 2015, the only time we've ever not finished in the red was consolidation and COVID relief. They were the only times. Every other time we've been anywhere in the red from 50,000 to 300,000.
Okay. Any other discussion? Can we get a roll call, please?
Mrs. Eckert,
Yes.
Mr. Franco,
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel,
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick,
Yes.
Dr. Perbola,
Yes.
Mr. Farr,
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold.
Yes. Item 7, motion to approve the payout of remaining sick time as of 6/7/24 to food service staff.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please. Oh,
I was just going to say, this is accumulated sick time that they have earned over the years, and it truly belongs to those employees.
Yes.
okay. Roll call,
Okay.
please.
Mrs. Eckerd?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Motion to approve bus and van contracts as presented.
Oh, motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckerd?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item 9, motion to approve textbook license renewals as listed. These are textbooks that have already been approved in the past. We're just renewing our licenses with them. We have our AP Science and Physics, Child Development, grades 3 and 4 ELA, and Eureka Math. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion?
Can
Roll
you-
call. Oh.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I'm trying to, the little star, K2 will 1-year license, the district will receive a credit. Oh, the district receives a credit on the math? Is that what that's
Yeah.
what the little star says? Okay.
Yep.
Yes, basically, our license expired, and we renewed K2, and then they announced a year later that they were updating the whole, like they were putting out new materials.
Oh, I see, yeah.
And we were
okay.
like, hey now, we want that credit back so we can put it towards the newer materials.
Well done.
That's Mary, that's Mrs. Egan.
Good job, Mrs. Egan.
All right. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckerd?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item 10, motion to approve the purchase of musical instruments and associated hardware from Steve Weiss Music at a cost of $28,042. This project was put out to RFP. Steve Weiss Music was the lowest bid and met all the district's requirements. This is for drums, right?
This
Correct.
is the drum line. Our
Drum line.
drum line drums, they get a lot of use, and they're in need of replacement. I'm so excited for this item. Like, our music, I love our music department. I mean, it's one of the things that we genuinely excel at. We're one of the best in the nation musically. And I'm very proud to put this one in front of you for consideration. Our drum line's absolutely incredible.
I can tell you too, just that they're thrilled. I met with the music department just to make sure the specs were met, and they're ecstatic about these drums.
Great.
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. O'Sherrick?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola? Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckerd?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item 11, motion to approve a contract with D&M Construction for the repair of the pool deck floor drain trap at our high school through a Co-Stars contract at a cost of $36,500.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? I will say that if I think about some of our infrastructure issues in this district, the thing that would give me nightmares is thinking about our sewer collection system at this building, because everything is under concrete, right? In the ground, in the hallways, everywhere, and it's aged. And this is repairing one drain for $36,000. So,
It became an extensive project. Like, we thought it was a block drain. It's not.
right, they're collapsed under the
It's
floor.
collapsed. It's not there anymore. Like, it's collapsed. It's gone. We had a camera down there, and what's going to happen is extensive.
Right, I mean, I've mentioned the chorus bathrooms when we've used them during board meetings that, there's signs like hold the flapper down and make sure all this stuff, and I was like, why do we have, that was really inappropriate. The first thought of how I was going to describe that came to mind. But my point is that why isn't it updated? Why don't we have the good working facilities? And the point was that it's a sewer problem that we're probably either going to have to put tons and tons of money into, or trying to do a cheaper solution will potentially cause more problems and could potentially make the bathrooms unusable. So this is something when we talk about capital repairs and expenses that are out there, like that, in my opinion, is almost like a little ticking time bomb. Any other discussion?
You know, and this is a good example of why I try to really control costs as much as I do throughout the course of the year. Because now when this comes up at the end of April, we actually have money to address that. And
Right.
when John Shapolsky, who does a tremendous job, we all know how good of a job he does, when he brings this forward and says it's got to be done, I mean, it's got to be done. But thank you. I just wanted to point that out.
You know, it might be, if we haven't done it already, it might be worth one of these summers, not this one, paying a company to come in and video, CCTV all of our pipes in here and see if there's areas that would be potentially benefited by coating on the inside. Like, there are technologies out there to help preserve some of this. If we can spot check areas that might be on the hair edge of being a problem.
Got it.
And these repairs aren't going to interfere with any upcoming events we have going on, correct?
No,
It's not going
this-
to interfere with?
no.
Okay.
No, not at all.
Okay, any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. Probola,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckerd,
Yes.
Mr. Franco,
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel,
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick,
Yes.
Mr. Farr,
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold.
Yes. Item 12, motion to approve the purchase of new wrestling mat from Rissolite, the Mat Company, at a cost of $17,409.60. This is being purchased through the athletic budget through a Co-Stars contract.
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion-
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Eckerd,
Yes.
Mr. Franco,
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel,
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick,
Yes.
Dr. Probola,
Yes.
Mr. Farr,
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold.
Yes. Item 13, motion to approve Assured Partners to serve as the district's insurance broker.
Motion to approve?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bennett, no, sorry. Mrs. Eckerd,
Yes.
Mr. Franco,
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel,
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick,
Yes.
Dr. Probola,
Yes.
Mr. Farr,
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold.
Yes. Item 14, motion to approve lease agreements between the Tunkhannock School District and Luzerne Intermediate Unit 18 for 3 classrooms at the former Mahogany Elementary School at a cost of $7,000 per classroom. Terms of the renewable leases as listed, July 1, 23 through June 30, 24, and July 1, 24 through June 30, 25.
Motion to approve? Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Just to clarify, it's 7,000 each year.
7,000 per classroom
Per
each
classroom
year.
each year.
Yes. Like right now, they're using 3 classrooms, but like as they move forward, if they want to utilize 5 classrooms, then it'll just be 7,000 times 5.
Okay. Thank you.
Perfect.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Eckerd,
Yes.
Mr. Franco,
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel,
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick,
Yes.
Dr. Probola,
Yes.
Mr. Farr,
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold.
Yes. Item 15, motion to approve application for payment number 4 to Scranton Electric Heating and Cooling Service Incorporated in the amount of $121,024 for mechanical construction at the high school.
Motion to approve? Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Franco,
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel,
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick,
Yes.
Dr. Probola,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckerd,
Yes.
Mr. Farr,
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold.
Yes. Item 16, motion to approve overnight out-of-state field trips as follows. A, the PA Governor's STEM competition in Harrisburg from May 7th to the 8th, and B, the senior class trip to Ocean City, New Jersey on the 21st.
Motion to approve?
Second?
What is the PA governors, who is that? Like, what grade is that?
They're high school students. They competed regionally, and they did exceptionally well. And they qualified for the state championships. I think there's 2 teams. Mr. Winsek, is that correct? There's 2 teams, and they both qualified, correct?
Awesome.
And I believe this is worth a shout out, correct me if I'm wrong, but we had a really great partnership with Mills Engineering and with Gay's True Value to really bring this project back to life at Tunkhannock.
It's worth mentioning that Patton, the state agency, is covering the cost of the overnight accommodations.
Okay, great. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Osherick?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckerd?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Before we move into additional public comments, I just want to announce it's already been advertised in the paper, I believe, but we will be having 2 board meetings in May. One of them is on May 2nd, and the other is as previously scheduled, which I believe was the 16th. 23rd. 23rd, okay.
I'd like to make note that the Missouri Intermediate Unit, by leasing our classrooms in Mahopany, not only are we getting rent from that, but also some of our students may be going there, so it's a much shorter busing time and much less busing expense
Oh, yes.
for Tunkhannock.
Significantly.
All right, with that, we'll open the floor to more public comments. Again, just a reminder, taxpayers, residents, students, staff, or parents of students of the Tunkhannock School District, 4-minute maximum, and please state your name when you come up to the podium.
Hello, Bill Widener. I'll go through my usual. This last month's been hard for former Tunkhannock. We lost a former board member, Skip Henning. We lost a high school custodian who retired, Rex Robinson. Lost a family member of one of our teachers. His name was Robert Stackhouse. Another family member of a board member, Ada Harvey. Another family member of a former employee, Ray Kuzma, and a fellow who I really enjoyed working with that was here, Mike Donahue, with the drug and alcohol program. And I know several families that he helped tremendously when they had seminars.
Thanks for that, Bill.
Pardon?
I said thanks for that. I appreciate that you bring that to us. at the
Mike
meeting.
Donahue was a wonderful man when we had the seminars with him. And he did a lot. I know personal families that got helped a lot. I've got other things, but I'll talk to the super. As this with the Mahopany thing and some other things, I got to do some more sorting out to figure out where it's going.
Okay. Thanks, Bill.
Diane Turl from Tunkhannock. Couple of quick questions is about the solar project. Have you released the paperwork and the research that went into that?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Have you released the paperwork on
It's
the
been on the
solar
website.
project?
It's been on the website, and it's been in multiple meetings that are available to watch on YouTube.
The whole report
All of the steps that we took and all the information that was gathered.
was
and
gathered with the cost and
Yeah.
everything for it, because I couldn't find it.
Well, it's actually tricky. Okay, in fairness, it is so tricky to find it on the website. Paul had to direct me the one day, so maybe Paul, I don't know how to,
I can tell you it's under district forms. If you go to the top header, and it's under district forms, and you go down there, and everything's down there. We have the cost analysis down there. We have the layout where you'll see the panels. We have the type of panels we're using, everything we've done throughout the process.
I'll have it moved to the main page under district news.
yeah, maybe there's a link that says solar project or, it is, remember you were helping me
Yes.
that one day? I couldn't find it either.
Mr. Simcoe, can we move those documents to district news?
Mark? Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Was natural gas ever installed? I know the lines were run to the school.
The lines were not run to this school yet, no.
They were not run to the school yet?
No, they're not.
Oh, so it's not going to be run?
We're in the process of having it done. We're negotiating with UGI on that, how that's gonna work and on what timeline, but.
Okay, because I wondered about that versus the $10 million for a solar project.
And I don't want to start answering all the questions, but like, we had that same discussion. It became that in the high school, for instance, they're all univents in every individual room that are run by electricity. So every single unit would have to get pulled out. We'd have to pull the ceiling. We'd have to run
replace
ductwork.
everything.
It ended up being like
Right.
a $30 million HVAC project just in this building.
To get that, okay.
Yes.
I just wanted a little bit of background information on it.
There are some buildings, such as the IC can be switched over, and the administration building can be switched over easily.
And some
And
of them
any new
can't,
HVAC
right?
systems we're installing, like this room is getting HVAC, the gym, the cafeteria, those are natural gas units.
Okay, good.
So, I
Okay,
mean,
okay.
it's a process.
Good. And I guess on the paperwork, it says where the $10 million is coming from?
The,
Okay.
More than half of it is going to come from our fund balance.
From the what?
From our fund balance
Okay.
that we currently have. The good thing is
On
it's a
that,
$10 million project, but we qualify right now through the Inflation Reduction Act. Right now, we qualify for about 40% back. So when this goes live, we get $4 million returned to us.
Back, okay.
We also get a 10% credit on top of inflation reduction because of our geographical location in the state of Pennsylvania. So we
Right.
get additional credits back from the federal government.
If that stays current by the time it gets done, yeah, I know. Okay, great, thank you.
any other public comment? Okay, any board comment? Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?